Child abuse. Imagine a 5-year-old boy being beaten so badly that he suffered 2 strokes because of it. 2 women from Oklahoma locked that same 5-year-old boy in a closet with duct tape over his eyes. They beat him with belts, a hammer, and had kicked him in his genitals until he bled. He told the police continuously that his mother and her girlfriend were responsible for the abuse he had experienced. Luckily, he was heard, and those women were charged with felony, child abuse by injury, and child neglect. Unfortunately, situations like this happen every day and have been for thousands of years. Child abuse dates all the way back to the Bible. For example, a pharaoh in Egypt ordered the death of all male infants, causing Moses to be put in a basket and thrown in a river. Another example of child abuse in primary years is that in early Rome, fathers could kill, abandon, or sell their children. Plato and Aristotle believed that children with physical or mental handicaps were believed to weaken the species, causing Plato and Aristotle to encourage parents to kill their defective child. As the years progressed, neglect, physical abuse, sexual abuse, and emotional abuse are the 4 main types of abuse that are reported. Neglect is the most common form of child abuse, reported at 78.3%. Neglect is defined as a parent or caretaker's failure to provide the basic needs of survival for a child. Physical abuse is the second most reported type at 17.6%. Physical abuse is when someone causes an injury to a child that was non-accidental. Another form of abuse is sexual abuse, reported at 9.2%. Child sexual abuse is sexual exploitation or sexual activities with a child or children. Emotional abuse is the last of the 4 major types of abuse. Emotional abuse is defined as a pattern of psychologically destructive behavior targeted toward a child or children. These types of abuse are reported each. Responsible adults should focus on preventing these types of situations more carefully because abuse can leave a long-term impact on a child's life. Abuse often is responsible for the victim falling into juvenile delinquency. Abuse causes children to be unable to speak for themselves, and often it can lead to the end of a child's life. Child abuse can leave long-term effects that the victim must deal with for the rest of his life. Physical, societal, behavioral, and psychological consequences are some effects that abuse can cause. Physical health consequences can be anywhere from a minor wound to severe wounds. Societal consequences causes our whole society to pay a price for child abuse and neglect. Behavioral consequences can cause difficulties during adolescence, alcohol or drug abuse, and abusive behavior. Psychological consequences can include self-esteem, depression, and relationship difficulties. Behavioral and psychological difficulties can cause juvenile delinquency. A child that has been abused is at a higher risk of having a criminal record. 14% of men in prison and 36% of women in prison profess to have been abused as children. Not every victim of child abuse is going to be a criminal. However, a majority will. Abuse can cause a child to be susceptible to risky, self-destructive, or aggressive behaviors. Those types of behaviors can cause the victim to engage in criminal-like activities. Nobody wants more criminals in society. Therefore, we should make it our goal to prevent child abuse as much as possible. The prevalence of child abuse in today's society is a prime example of how human life has been devalued. Child abuse can end in the death of a victim. About 5 children die every day from child abuse or neglect. That is an estimated 1,580 children who died of abuse or neglect a year. Children under the age of 4 are the most frequent victims of fatality. About 46.5% of fatalities happen to children under 1 year. Children younger than 3 years make up almost 3/4 of child fatalities. Abusers choose younger victims because they are vulnerable. Unfortunately, with these young victims being so small, fatal injuries are easier to come by. If society learned how to recognize signs of abuse in the early stages, people could help these defenseless children from dying. Children who have experienced abuse typically will not tell anyone. Since children are afraid to tell, this gives society the opportunity to learn how to prevent and recognize the early symptoms of abuse. Children who are victims of abuse are normally too afraid or too confused to tell someone. A child is sometimes awarded with gifts and keeps a secret. They sometimes blame themselves or even fear what might happen if they tell, so they try to protect the person who is abusing them. The abuser could attempt to play off the victim's fears or threaten them that they will be punished if they tell anyone what is happening. Victims will generally be ashamed of what is being done to them. Society must take action in preventing child abuse. People can do this by 1. Learning the facts and understanding the risks. 2. Minimizing opportunities for abuse. 3. Talk about it. 4. Always stay alert. 5. Make a plan. 6. Act on suspicions. And lastly, 7. Get involved. Help these children get their voices back. Help prevent child abuse.